Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Today, I want to talk to you about something deeply personal yet universally powerful: trusting your instincts, especially when it contacts you after a breakup. It's in these moments, when emotions are high and clarity is low, that we often make the biggest mistakes. We question ourselves, we doubt what we felt, and we silence the very instincts that protected us. This isn't just about romance. It's about reclaiming your self-worth, your dignity, and your peace. If you've ever struggled with what to do when he suddenly reaches out, this message is for you. Let's get into it. You know that moment when your phone lights up with his name, the one you told yourself you were finally done with? That sudden jolt in your chest, that voice inside you that doesn't speak in full sentences but just says, "No, not this again." That's your instinct, and too often we ignore it. We tell ourselves we're being too harsh, too emotional, that maybe we should give it another shot. But I want to tell you something. Your first instinct, that quiet gut feeling, it's usually the truth. It's not coming from fear. It's coming from experience, from everything you felt, everything you saw, and everything you had to survive the last time. Your instincts don't need to explain themselves with a PowerPoint presentation. They don't need to provide proof, evidence, and data analysis. They just need to be trusted. Because the truth is, your body and heart often know something before your brain is ready to admit it. And when he contacts you, especially after hurting you, there's a very specific kind of discomfort you feel. A pause, a hesitation, that tiny internal voice that says, "Be careful, something's not right here." And yet, we override it. Why? Because we're wired to want connection. We crave resolution. We want to believe that maybe, just maybe, this time will be different, that he finally sees your worth, that he regrets letting you go. But I'll be honest, most of the time, that message isn't about him changing. It's about him checking if you still haven't. It's not about rekindling love. It's about testing access. He's wondering, can I still get to her? Is she still available to me emotionally? And your instinct knows this. It picks up on energy, on tone, on the vagueness of his words. It knows when someone is sincere and when someone is just revisiting you out of convenience or boredom. So why is it so hard to trust that instinct? Because we want love to work. We want our pain to be validated by a comeback. We want the happy ending, but instinct doesn't care about fantasy. It only cares about protection. And in that moment, when you're staring at his message, you're not confused. You're just trying to convince yourself to ignore what you already know. But you do know. You know how it felt when he left, how it felt when you cried alone, how it felt when he didn't choose you the first time. And your instinct, that sacred part of you that's seen it all, is trying to save you from going back to that same pain. You don't need more conversations. You don't need closure. You need to believe that your inner voice is wiser than your temporary emotions. The truth doesn't scream, it whispers. And right now, it's telling you you deserve better than to relearn the same lesson twice. Confusion is one of the most powerful red flags there is, but too often we ignore it. When he contacts you and your first emotional response isn't joy or peace, but a mix of uncertainty, hesitation, and anxiety, that's not a signal to go running back. That's a signal to pause, to ask yourself why someone who claims to care about you brings so much chaos with just one message. You see, when something is right, it feels calm. It feels secure. It doesn't throw you into a mental storm of, what does this mean? What should I say? What if I ignore him? What if I don't? But confusion has a way of disguising itself as excitement. It taps into that hope you've buried, the one that says, maybe this is the moment it all finally clicks. Maybe he's realized it. Maybe he's come back for real. But if you're honest with yourself, How many times have you been here before? The moment he reaches out and your heart leaps for a second, only to spiral right after, wondering if you're being naive again. That emotional back and forth, that tug of war, isn't romantic, it's exhausting. And the reason it keeps happening is because deep down, there's a disconnect between what he's saying and what you're feeling. When someone's intentions are genuine, they don't leave you questioning your worth, your sanity, or your safety. You don't need to be a relationship expert to know when something feels off. If you're lying awake at night rereading the message, trying to decode what he really means, that's already your answer. You shouldn't need a translator for love. You shouldn't have to study every word and punctuation mark like it's a test. Because the truth is, when a person truly wants to be with you, they don't communicate in riddles. They make you feel certain, not just about them, but about yourself, your value, your boundaries. And here's the part that's hard to hear. Sometimes we stay in confusion because clarity would force us to walk away, and that's scary. So instead, we tolerate the gray area. We keep answering. We keep giving energy. We keep playing it cool, hoping we'll figure it out along the way. But you deserve better than to live in emotional limbo. You deserve someone who makes you feel safe, not someone who makes you second guess every interaction. Confusion isn't romantic. It's not mysterious. It's not some movie moment that builds into a fairy tale. It's a signal that something is misaligned. And the longer you stay in that space, the more it chips away at your confidence. The more you start questioning yourself instead of the person who brought the confusion in the first place. So the next time he reaches out and leaves you feeling unsettled, remember this: peace is the real proof of love, not confusion dressed up as chemistry. Loneliness is a liar. In the quiet moments, when you're missing him and your phone is still, it starts whispering things that aren't true. It tells you he wasn't that bad. It reminds you of the good days, the laughs, the inside jokes, the way he held your hand when you were nervous. It conveniently forgets the nights you cried alone, the texts he ignored, the way you felt small and unimportant more times than you can count. And when he suddenly reaches out again, it feels like maybe this is the moment that turns it all around. Maybe the story isn't over yet. Maybe all that pain finally meant something. But here's the truth: loneliness makes you romanticize the past. It plays tricks on your memory. It doesn't show you the full picture. It shows you highlights, carefully edited, like a movie trailer that skips over all the parts that left you broken. And when you're in that vulnerable space, it's easy to believe that going back is better than staying in the uncertainty of moving on. That's when you make the mistake, when you let loneliness sit in the driver's seat and convince you that love means accepting what hurt you before. You have to remind yourself of why it ended. Not just that it ended, but what you went through, what it cost you to finally walk away. That wasn't weakness. That was strength. And you didn't survive all of that just to end up right back where you started. It's not that people don't deserve second chances, it's that they have to earn them. And even then, it's okay to say, I've grown too much to go back, because the version of you who chose to leave already knew something that your lonely heart is trying to forget. It's not love if it only resurfaces when he feels your absence. It's not love if it disappeared when you needed consistency and shows up now that you've started to heal. That's not a sign from the universe. It's just a test. And your answer to that test should be based on reality, not the fantasy you created in the gaps between text messages. You don't need to be rescued from your loneliness by someone who caused it. You need to sit with it, learn from it, and rise through it. And because once you do, once you truly see that loneliness is not a reason to settle, you stop giving past pain new opportunities to hurt you again. He may reach out with a, "Hey, I've been thinking about you." But if that message makes you more anxious than excited, more confused than clear, then it's not a door, it's a trap. And you deserve more than to be pulled back into a version of yourself you've outgrown. So don't let loneliness rewrite the story. You already fought too hard for this chapter of peace. You teach people how to treat you by what you tolerate. And every time you respond to someone who once disrespected your heart, you're giving them a quiet lesson in what they can get away with. When he reaches out after disappearing, after hurting you, after showing you that he didn't value you the first time, you're standing at a crossroad. That moment right there is not just about him contacting you. It's about the standard you're willing to reinforce. And your silence, your boundary, your no, that speaks louder than any clever reply ever could. The mistake we often make is thinking we have to respond to prove something. We tell ourselves, if I don't reply, I look bitter. If I don't say anything, he'll never know how much he hurt me. Maybe I need to show him I'm not angry anymore. But what you're really doing when you respond is giving him access to you that he didn't earn back. And he's not reaching out because he's ready to be better. He's reaching out to see if you still haven't changed, if you still feel the same, if you'll still let him back in. But the version of you that allowed those crumbs before, she's gone. Or at least she's trying to be. And the only way she stays gone is if you honor her. That means protecting your peace at all costs, even if it makes you feel rude or cold or guilty. Because let's be honest, he wasn't worried about how you felt when he ghosted you. He wasn't wondering if you were okay when you were crying, questioning your worth. So why is it your job now to be polite when he suddenly decides to pop back in? You don't owe anyone a response. You owe yourself the life you've been building, the self-respect you've been nurturing. And sometimes that looks like silence, not because you're weak, not because you're afraid, but because silence is a message. It says, I'm not the same woman who begged for your attention. I'm not the same person who would rather have something toxic than be alone. I've grown, and I don't open my door to just anyone anymore. That shift is powerful. It doesn't require drama or closure or the perfect parting words. It just requires you to be consistent with what you say you want. Because every time you let someone who hurt you back in, without growth, without accountability, without real change, you teach them that the consequences of hurting you are temporary. But when you stay silent, when you draw a firm line, you send a very different message. I'm not here for emotional games. I'm not here to make you feel better. I'm here to protect my peace. And that peace you're protecting, it's the most valuable thing you have right now. When someone truly wants to be in your life, you won't be left guessing. You won't have to decipher vague texts or wonder what he meant when he said he missed you but isn't ready for something serious. If he's serious, his actions will make that crystal clear. Not in a dramatic, over-the-top way, but in a consistent, grounded, respectful way that leaves no room for confusion. And that's the difference between someone who wants to keep you around for comfort and someone who's ready to show up with real intention. So when he reaches out after time apart, maybe after breaking your heart, pulling away or walking out, it's easy to get swept up in the idea that he's had some great realization, that the space made him see what he lost. And maybe he even says all the right things, but words are easy. Words can be dressed up and delivered beautifully. It's the actions that tell you what's real. And if those actions are inconsistent, delayed, or half-hearted, then you already know what choice you need to make. You don't need to be kept on a string. You don't need someone who checks in every few weeks just to remind you he still exists. That's not commitment, it's control. It's someone trying to keep the door open just in case. But you're not a backup plan. You're not someone's maybe. You're not the person who waits around for crumbs and calls it love. If he wants to be in your life, he'll show up in a way that removes all doubt, not one that creates more of it. You'll notice it in the consistency, the clarity, the way he communicates without you having to chase. It won't feel like you're doing emotional gymnastics just to keep the conversation going. He won't play it cool to protect his ego. He'll be honest, direct. And you won't need to coach him on how to show up. Because when someone is ready, they don't need to be convinced. They just act. The challenge is, when we're still healing, we're vulnerable to potential. We hear a few sweet words, and we start building a story again. We fill in the blanks with the best case scenario, even when his behavior doesn't support it. But potential is not enough. You deserve proof. You deserve consistency. You deserve someone who makes their feelings known, not through drama, but through presence. If he's serious, you won't feel like a question mark. You'll feel like a priority. So when he reaches out, pay less attention to what he says and more attention to what he does next. Because the ones who mean it don't just talk, they follow through. And the more you value your peace, the more you'll recognize that mixed signals aren't love, they're a warning sign. There comes a point in your life when you look back at the version of yourself who tolerated the bare minimum, who stayed too long, who kept giving chances out of love, fear, or hope, and you don't recognize her anymore. That's growth. That's healing. And it's one of the most powerful signs that you've started to truly love yourself. Because real self-love isn't just about bubble baths and affirmations. It's about saying no. It's about saying no to what you've outgrown, no to the patterns, the people, and the energy that once felt familiar but now feels suffocating. When he reaches out again, that part of you that used to be quick to respond might hesitate. Not because you're bitter, not because you want revenge, but because the woman you're becoming values her peace more than she craves his presence. She knows what it cost her the last time. She remembers the confusion, the disappointment, the way she kept trying to prove she was enough. And now, she's done proving, because she knows she's enough. And once you get to that place, you realize that the love you were chasing from someone else was always meant to be given to yourself first. It's easy to forget that when someone you once cared for reappears. All those old emotions can flood back in, clouding your clarity, pulling at your heart. You think, maybe he means it this time. Maybe we're different now. And sure, people change, but so do you. And sometimes the greatest act of growth is recognizing that even if he's changed, you're no longer in a place to accept what he's offering, because you've outgrown temporary affection. You've outgrown being someone's emotional safety net. You've outgrown being the one who's always ready to forgive while getting so little in return. It takes courage to walk away from something that once meant everything to you, but it takes even more courage to not walk back when it shows up again looking shiny and familiar. That's the kind of strength most people won't see, but you will feel. It's the strength of someone who knows her worth, who isn't waiting for closure, an apology, or a grand gesture. She's not angry, she's just focused. And that kind of focus is magnetic. It attracts better because it no longer entertains less. So when he reaches out and the part of you that used to rush in feels strangely still, trust that stillness. That's the new you, protecting everything she's fought so hard to build. Loving yourself sometimes means walking away quietly from what once had a hold on you and never looking back.